Eleanor rubbed her tired eyes as she walked down the narrow hallway of Station Alpha 7. 3 months on this remote outpost, and she still couldn't get used to the strange blue light that filled the corridors. The station sat on a small planet, called Kepler 44b, right between human space and alien territory. It was supposed to be a place where both sides could meet and talk about peace. She wasn't supposed to be here. Eleanor was a combat medic, trained to patch up soldiers in the middle of battles. But after what happened on Titan Base, she needed somewhere quiet, somewhere far from the fighting. The nightmares still came every night, making sleep almost impossible. Attention all personnel. The station's computer announced, "We have a critical power failure in sections C through F. Emergency housing protocols are now active." Eleanor stopped. Walking. Emergency protocols meant everyone had to double up in rooms until the power came back. She hoped she'd get paired with someone quiet, maybe Dr. Kim from the medical bay, or Lieutenant Torres from communications. She made her way to the main briefing room where Station Commander Williams was reading names from a tablet. People looked nervous. Nobody liked having their routine messed up, especially when aliens were involved. Rodriguez and Chen, room C4, Peterson and Yamamoto. Room C6, the commander kept reading. Eleanor waited, tapping her foot softly on the metal floor. Vasquez, the commander finally called. Eleanor stepped forward. Room B12. "Who's my roommate, sir?" The commander looked uncomfortable. "Queen Zerathik of the Third House." Eleanor felt her stomach drop. The alien queen, the leader of an entire star system? The same being who commanded fleets that had fought against humans for over a decade, sir. "I'm just a medic. Shouldn't she room with someone more important?" The computer assigns rooms based on available space and compatibility factors. "Your psychological profile indicates you're calm under pressure." The commander handed her a key card. "Don't mess this up. Sergeant, these peace talks are too important." Eleanor walked slowly to room B12. Her hands felt sweaty. She'd seen Queen Zerathik from a distance during the formal ceremonies. The Zephyrian was tall and elegant, with pale blue skin that seemed to glow softly. Her people looked almost human, except for their unusual coloring and the way their eyes changed from silver to deep purple depending on their mood. The door to B12 slid open with a soft hiss. The room was small, with 2 beds, a tiny table, and a shared bathroom. Eleanor's military gear sat on one bed. On the other was a collection of strange, flowing robes and colors she didn't have names for. "You must be Sergeant Vasquez." Eleanor turned around quickly. Queen Zerathik stood in the doorway, somehow managing to look royal even in the station's cheap civilian clothes. Her voice was soft but clear, with just a hint of an accent that made each word sound like music. "Yes, Your Majesty. I mean, Your Highness. Eleanor felt her face get hot. "I don't know the proper way to address you." "Zerathik is fine when we're alone." The Queen stepped into the room and looked around. "This is quite small. I can sleep on the floor," Eleanor offered quickly, "or in the medical bay. I don't want to make you uncomfortable." Zerathik's eyes shifted from silver to a warmer gold color. Eleanor had learned that meant curiosity or mild amusement. "That won't be necessary. We're both adults. We can share space for a few days." Eleanor nodded and sat on her bed, not sure what to do next. She'd been in combat situations that felt less awkward than this, at least in battle. She knew what was expected of her. The first few hours passed in uncomfortable silence. Zerathik read from a device that looked like a tablet made of liquid light. Eleanor cleaned her medical equipment for the 3rd time that day, just to have something to do with her hands. When dinner time came, Eleanor grabbed a protein bar from her pack. Zerathik produced what looked like a piece of fruit that glowed faintly from the inside. "Is that safe to eat near humans?" Eleanor asked, then immediately felt stupid. "Sorry, that sounded rude. It's perfectly safe, just a kala fruit from my home world." Zerathik took a small bite. "Your protein bars, on the other hand, smell like industrial chemicals." Eleanor looked at her dinner and laughed despite herself. "Yeah, they pretty much taste like that too." It was the first real conversation they'd had, and somehow it made the The room feel a little less tense. Night came quickly on this planet. Elena changed into her sleep clothes in the bathroom and came out to find Zerethik sitting perfectly still on her bed, eyes closed. Elena wasn't sure if the queen was sleeping or meditating. Elena lay down but kept her eyes open, staring at the ceiling. Every little sound made her jump. The hum of the air recycler, the distant footsteps in the hallway, the soft breathing from the other bed. She must have dozed off because suddenly she was back on Titan base. The explosions, the screams, the faces of the soldiers she couldn't save. Elena woke up with a gasp, her heart racing and sweat on her forehead. "Are you in distress?" Elena looked over and saw Zerethik sitting up, her eyes now a deep blue color that Elena thought might mean concern. "Just a bad dream. Sorry if I woke you. I wasn't sleeping. Your breathing changed 23 minutes ago. You've been experiencing REM sleep disruption." Elena sat up, surprised. "You were monitoring my sleep?" "Not intentionally. My people are naturally aware of the biological rhythms of those around us. It helps us in diplomatic situations." Zerethik paused. "You have trauma responses consistent with combat stress." Elena felt defensive. "I'm fine. I can do my job. I didn't suggest you couldn't." Zerethik's voice was gentle. "But you're suffering. There are techniques that might help. Alien techniques, breathing techniques. They work for most oxygen-breathing species." Zerethik moved to sit on the edge of her bed, closer to Elena. "If you're willing." Elena hesitated. Everything about this felt wrong according to her military training. You didn't accept help from the enemy. You didn't show weakness. You definitely didn't let an alien queen see you having nightmares. But she was so tired. Tired of the dreams, tired of waking up scared, tired of feeling like her own mind was working against her. "What kind of breathing techniques?" Zerethik smiled, and for the first time, Elena thought she looked almost normal, like someone who genuinely wanted to help. "Close your eyes and listen to my breathing. Try to match the rhythm." Elena closed her eyes and focused. Zerethik's breathing was slower and deeper than human normal, but somehow soothing, like waves on a beach or wind through trees. Elena found herself naturally falling into the same pattern. Good. Now imagine each breath carrying away a small piece of tension. Don't fight the memories. Just let them flow past like clouds in the sky. Elena felt her shoulders relax for the first time in months. The tight knot in her chest started to loosen. She didn't know if it was the breathing or just having someone there who wasn't trying to fix her or tell her she should be over it by now. When she opened her eyes, Zerethik was still sitting there, her eyes now a soft green color. "How do you feel?" "Better," Elena admitted. "Thank you. Rest now. I'll remain aware in case the dreams return." Elena lay back down, and for the first time since Titan base, she felt like sleep might actually bring peace instead of terror. As she drifted off, she heard Zerethik's steady breathing and realized that maybe, just maybe, this strange arrangement might not be as bad as she'd thought. The last thing she remembered before sleep took her was thinking that Queen Zerethik didn't seem much like an enemy at all. Elena woke up slowly, feeling more rested than she had in months. For a moment, she couldn't remember where she was. Then she saw the pale blue figure sitting quietly at the small table, reading from her glowing device. "Good morning, Zerethik," said without looking up. "You slept for 7 hours and 12 minutes without interruption." Elena sat up, running her hand through her messy hair. "You were counting." "I wasn't counting. I simply noticed things." Zerethik finally looked at her, and her eyes were that warm gold color again. "How do you feel?" "Actually good, really good." Elena stretched and was surprised to find her usual morning tension was almost gone. "Thank you. For last night, that breathing thing really worked. My grandmother taught it to me when I was young. She said fear is like water. The more you try to hold it back, the stronger it becomes. Better to let it flow through you." Elena got dressed quickly and grabbed another protein bar for breakfast. She noticed Zerethik watching her with what looked like amusement. "What? Do all humans eat the same thing every day?" Elena looked at her breakfast and laughed. "Pretty much. Military habit. When you find something that works, you stick with That seems limiting, says the person eating glowing fruit. Zerathic's eyes shifted to that brighter gold that Elena was learning meant she was pleased. Would you like to try some? Kale fruit is quite nutritious. Elena hesitated. Sharing food felt personal somehow, but Zerathic had helped her sleep, so maybe she could be a little adventurous. The fruit was sweet with a strange fizzy sensation on her tongue. Not bad, just different. It tastes like happiness, Elena said, immediately feeling silly for such a weird description. That's actually very accurate. Kale fruit contains compounds that naturally boost mood. Zerathic looked genuinely impressed. Most humans can't detect those subtle effects. Elena felt oddly proud of herself. When was the last time someone had complimented her on anything other than her medical skills? Later that morning, Commander Williams called Elena to his office. She found him pacing behind his desk, looking worried. How's the rooming situation working out, Sergeant? Fine, sir. No problems. Good, because we've got a situation. The power repairs are taking longer than expected. Could be another week, maybe two. Elena tried to keep her expression neutral, but inside she felt a little flutter of something. Relief, anticipation, understood. Sir, I need you to keep an eye on things. The Queen seems different since yesterday. More relaxed. Her advisors are asking questions. Elena thought about Zerathic sitting calmly at the table that morning, no longer holding herself with the rigid perfection she maintained during the formal meetings. Different how, sir? Just keep your eyes open and remember, everything she says could be important intelligence. Elena nodded. But something about the conversation bothered her. Intelligence gathering felt wrong somehow, like she'd be betraying a friend, which was crazy because they'd only known each other for one day. That evening, Elena returned to their room to find Zerathic sitting on the floor, in what looked like a meditation pose. Her eyes were closed and her breathing was the same steady rhythm from the night before. Elena tried to move quietly, but Zerathic spoke without opening her eyes. How was your day, Elena? It was the first time Zerathic had used her first name. Elena liked how it sounded with that musical accent. Long. Boring. How about you? Frustrating. My advisors want me to request separate quarters immediately. They think sharing space with a human is undignified. Elena felt a stab of disappointment. Do you want separate quarters? Zerathic opened her eyes and looked directly at Elena. Do you? The question hung in the air between them. Elena realized she didn't want separate quarters at all. For the first time since Titan Base, she felt safe sleeping, but admitting that felt dangerous. I sleep better here, Elena said finally, with you keeping an eye on my dreams, and I find your presence peaceful. You don't expect anything from me except basic courtesy. Elena sat down on her bed. What do your people usually expect? Zerathic was quiet for a long moment. Everything. Perfect decisions, perfect wisdom, perfect strength, always being the queen. Never just being Zerathic. Elena understood that feeling. In the military, you were always the medic, the soldier, the rank on your uniform. People saw your job before they saw you. What's it like, Elena asked, having that much responsibility? Heavy. Every choice I make affects millions of lives. Every word I speak could start or end conflicts. Zerathic's eyes shifted to a deeper blue. Sometimes I dream about being ordinary, having a small job, a simple life, people who know me as just myself. Elena was surprised by the honesty. This didn't sound like the terrifying alien queen from the war stories. This sounded like someone who was just as tired as Elena was. In a different way, I used to dream about being important, Elena said, making a real difference instead of just patching people up so they could go get hurt again. But you do make a difference. You heal people. You ease suffering. I couldn't heal the people who mattered most. The words slipped out before Elena could stop them. She never talked about Titan Base. Not to the counselors, not to her friends, not to anyone. Zerathic didn't push for details, didn't offer empty comfort. She just sat there, present and listening. I had a medical team, Elena continued, surprising herself. 6 good people. When the base was attacked, we were trying to evacuate the wounded. The transport was hit just as it took off. Elena's hand started shaking slightly. Zerethik noticed and moved to sit on Elena's bed, close enough to be supportive, but not touching. They trusted me to get them out safely. I failed them. You couldn't control enemy actions. I was their leader. I should have seen it coming. Should have done something different. Zerethik's eyes were now that deep, concerned blue. I lost an entire fleet to a miscalculation once, 3,000 souls under my command. I replayed that decision for months, imagining different choices. Elena looked at her with surprise. You made military mistakes, many. The difference between a good leader and a great one isn't avoiding mistakes. It's learning to carry them without letting them destroy your ability to make future decisions. They sat in comfortable silence for a while. Elena felt something she hadn't experienced in months, the sense that someone truly understood what she was going through. When bedtime came, Elena didn't even hesitate to lie down while Zerethik was still awake. The Queen had proven she could be trusted with Elena's vulnerable moments. But halfway through the night, the nightmares came back. This time it wasn't just Titan Base. It was every patient she'd lost, every face that haunted her quiet moments. Elena woke up gasping and immediately felt Zerethik's presence beside her bed. The breathing technique? Zerethik asked softly. Elena nodded, too shaken to speak. But this time, when Zerethik guided her through the calming breaths, she didn't just sit nearby. She stayed right there, a steady presence in the dark. You're safe here, Zerethik whispered. I'll watch over your dreams. Elena felt tears she'd been holding back for months finally come. Not the angry, frustrated tears she'd cried alone, but the kind that actually brought relief. When she finally fell back asleep, Zerethik was still sitting beside her bed like a guardian. Elena's last conscious thought was that she'd never felt so protected by another person's simple presence. In the morning, Elena woke to find a small kawa fruit on her nightstand, and Zerethik already dressed and reading. Neither of them mentioned the tears or the night watch, but something had shifted between them. They were no longer just reluctant roommates. They were becoming something Elena didn't have a word for yet, but it felt important in a way that had nothing to do with politics or peace treaties. It felt like the beginning of genuine friendship. 2 weeks had passed since the power failure, and the repairs were finally complete. Elena stood in the hallway outside room B12, holding her reassignment papers. She was supposed to move back to her original quarters today. She knocked on the door, even though she had her own key card. It felt like the polite thing to do now. Come in. Zerethik's voice called. Elena entered to find the Queen packing her flowing robes into a travel case. The sight made Elena's chest feel tight. So, we're both moving out today, Elena said, trying to keep her voice casual. Zerethik paused in her packing. Yes. The station commander informed me this morning that standard housing protocols are resuming. Elena nodded and started gathering her medical supplies. The room felt different already. Less like home and more like just another station quarters. Elena, she looked up. Zerethik was holding one of her robes, but she wasn't folding it. Have you submitted your room transfer request yet? Elena held up her papers. Just got them, you? I was about to. Zerethik set down the robe. But I find myself reluctant. Elena felt a flutter of hope. Reluctant? These past 2 weeks have been the most restful I've experienced in years. Your presence is. Zerethik searched for the right word. Stabilizing. Elena sat down on her bed. I've been sleeping through the night, every night. That hasn't happened since before the war. They looked at each other across the small room that had become their shared refuge. What if we didn't submit the transfer requests? Elena asked quietly. Would that be acceptable to your superiors? Elena thought about her conversation with Commander Williams. I'd need a good reason. Military reasons. Zerethik's eyes shifted to that thoughtful gold color. What if we framed it as a cultural exchange program? I could teach you Zephyrian customs. You could help me understand human military protocols. Elena felt herself smile. That's actually not a bad idea. Before she could lose her nerve, Elena walked to the communication panel and requested a meeting with Commander Williams. 30 minutes later, she was standing in his office trying to explain why she wanted to continue sharing quarters with the alien queen. Let me get this straight, Sergeant. You want to voluntarily continue this arrangement? Yes, sir. For intelligence gathering purposes? The commander raised an eyebrow. Intelligence gathering? Elena had practiced this speech in her head. Sir, Queen Zerthik has been sharing information about Zephyrian culture, military structure, and diplomatic protocols. This is valuable intelligence that could help future peace negotiations. And she's willing to continue sharing this information? She's expressed interest in learning about our military medical procedures in emergency protocols. It would be a mutual exchange. Commander Williams leaned back in his chair. What's she really like, Vasquez, when she's not in formal meetings? Elena thought carefully about her answer. She's intelligent, sir, thoughtful. She genuinely seems to want peace between our peoples, and she's dealing with a lot of pressure from her own advisors. Pressure how? They want her to be perfect all the time, make decisions that affect millions of people. It's similar to combat stress, but different, more constant. The commander studied Elena's face. You've been sleeping better. Dr. Kim mentioned your last medical levels showed significant improvement in stress indicators. Elena nodded. Yes, sir. The cultural exchange has been educational. After what felt like forever, the commander smiled slightly. Approved. But I want weekly reports on anything significant you learn about Zephyrian capabilities or intentions. Elena felt guilty agreeing to spy on her friend, but she nodded. Understood, sir. When Elena returned to B12, she found Zerthik sitting at their small table with her own unpacked belongings. How did your meeting go? Zerthik asked. Approved. You. My advisors were displeased, but I convinced them it was a diplomatic necessity. Zerthik's eyes twinkled with that golden amusement. I may have implied that I was gathering intelligence on human weaknesses. Elena laughed. We're both terrible at being spies. The worst spies in the galaxy, Zerthik agreed. That evening, they fell back into their routine as if nothing had changed. Elena cleaned her medical equipment while Zerthik reviewed diplomatic files. They shared dinner. Elena had started eating kala fruit regularly, while Zerthik had tried human protein bars and declared them an offense to all known concepts of nutrition. Can I ask you something? Elena said as they prepared for sleep. Of course. Why did you really want to keep sharing this room? Zerthik was quiet for a long moment. In my culture, sleeping in the presence of another person is considered deeply intimate, not romantically, but it requires absolute trust. For my entire adult life, I've slept alone because queens cannot show such vulnerability. Elena understood. But here, it's just practical. Yes, here. It's simply two beings helping each other rest peacefully. No political implications, no judgment, no expectations. Zerthik's eyes shifted to that soft green of contentment. I had forgotten what it felt like to just exist without performing royalty. Elena lay down and pulled her blanket up. I had forgotten what it felt like to not be afraid of my own dreams. As Elena drifted off to sleep, she heard Zerthik settling into her own bed. The quiet sounds of someone else breathing, someone else present in the dark, had become as essential to Elena's peace as the breathing exercises themselves. 3 days later, Elena was in the medical bay when alarms started blaring. Emergency codes flashed on every screen. Someone was injured in the maintenance section. Elena grabbed her medical kit and ran toward the emergency. She found a maintenance worker trapped under a fallen beam, conscious but in obvious pain. While other personnel worked to lift the beam, Elena assessed his injuries. Possible internal bleeding. Definitely some broken ribs. She called out, "We need to move him carefully." As they lifted the worker onto a stretcher, Elena noticed a small crowd had gathered, including Zerthik, who was watching from a respectful distance. Elena worked quickly and efficiently, starting an IV, administering pain medication, and stabilizing the man's breathing. Her hands moved with practiced precision, her voice calm and reassuring as she explained each procedure to keep the patient conscious and focused. "You're doing great, Johnson. Stay with me. We're going to get you fixed up." It wasn't until the patient was stable and being transported to the main medical By that Elena realized Zerethik was still watching. The queen's eyes were a deep, warm gold that Elena had never seen before. Later that evening, Zerethik was unusually quiet during dinner. "Everything okay?" Elena asked. "I watched you work today. During the emergency," Elena nodded. "Johnson's going to be fine," scared himself more than anything. "That's not what I meant." Zerethik set down her piece of calla fruit. "I watched you transform. In the space of seconds, you went from Elena, my roommate, to Elena the healer. It was remarkable." Elena felt herself blush slightly. "Just doing my job." "No, you were doing. You're calling. There's a difference." Zerethik's eyes stayed that warm gold. "You move with such certainty, such compassion. Johnson felt safe the moment you touched him. I could see it in his face." Elena had never thought about her work that way. "I just want to help people feel better." "And you do. Watching you today, I understood something important." "What? Why?" "My advisors are wrong about humans. They see you as weak because you show compassion, because you help others even when there's no benefit to yourselves. But that compassion is actually your greatest strength." Elena felt something warm spread through her chest. No one had ever described her compassion as strength before. "My people value strength through isolation, power through emotional control." Zerethik continued. "But you showed me something different today. Strength through connection, power through service." That night, Elena fell asleep thinking about Zerethik's words for the first time since Titan Base. She felt proud of who she was, not ashamed of who she couldn't save. And in the bed across from her, Zerethik lay thinking about how Elena had kneeled beside an injured stranger and made him feel safe with nothing but skill and kindness. Both of them were beginning to understand that their friendship was changing them in ways that went far beyond just sleeping better. 3 weeks into their arrangement, Elena and Zerethik had developed a rhythm that felt as natural as breathing. Elena would wake first, always surprised by how rested she felt. Zerethik would already be awake, sitting quietly in meditation. Until Elena stirred, their mornings had become small celebrations of discovery. Zerethik had been teaching Elena basic Zephyrian words, delighting in how Elena's human accent made everything sound different. "Kethara," Zerethik said slowly, her eyes shifting to that patient gold color she wore when teaching. "Kethara." Elena repeated, though it came out more like Kethara. "Close. Try letting the TH sound flow like water instead of stopping it." Elena tried again. And this time Zerethik's eyes brightened to an almost white gold. "Better. That means peaceful dreams. It's what we say to someone we care about before sleep." Elena felt warmth spread through her chest. "What would I say back?" "Veltaraketh, sweet rest." "My friend." Elena practiced the phrase until she could say it smoothly. That night, when they prepared for sleep, she whispered Veltaraketh to Zerethik. The queen's eyes went soft green with contentment. In return, Elena had been sharing human music with Zerethik. She found an old acoustic guitar in the station's recreation room and brought it to their quarters. "This is Amazing Grace," Elena said, playing the simple melody. "It's about finding peace after being lost." Zerethik listened with complete attention, her eyes cycling through colors Elena was learning to read like emotions. Silver for curiosity, gold for pleasure, deep blue for being moved. The melody is mathematical, Zerethik observed, but also emotional. How do humans create beauty from such simple patterns? Same way you create that liquid light art, I guess. You take something basic and put feeling into it. Elena had also been teaching Zerethik about human medical knowledge. The queen was fascinated by how Elena could read so much information from simple observations. "Show me again how you assess someone's health just by looking," Zerethik requested. Elena demonstrated on Zerethik herself. "Your skin color is good, which means proper circulation. Your breathing is steady and deep. Your eyes are clear and tracking properly. The way you hold yourself tells me you're not in pain anywhere. And all of this tells you I'm healthy. It tells me you're healthy right now, in this moment. Humans change constantly. We have to keep checking." Zerethik found this concept fascinating. "My people believe health is a state of being, not a moment-to-moment condition." "Both are probably true," Elena said. "You can be fundamentally healthy, but still have moments of illness. These daily exchanges had created an intimacy Elena hadn't expected. They knew each other's habits, preferences, and ways of thinking. Elena knew Zerthik meditated for exactly 23 minutes each morning. Zerthik knew Elena always checked her medical supplies 3 times before leaving the room. But their peaceful routine was about to be disrupted. Elena was returning from her shift when she saw a familiar figure in the corridor outside their room, tall, dark-haired, wearing the uniform of a major. Her heart sank. David Chen, her ex-fiancé. "Hello, Elena." "David, what are you doing here? New security assignment." "Imagine my surprise when I heard you were rooming with the alien queen." His voice carried that disapproving tone she remembered too well. Elena felt defensive immediately. "It's a cultural exchange program. That's what they told me." David stepped closer, and Elena noticed other personnel in the hallway watching with interest. "Can we talk privately?" Elena glanced at their room door. Zerthik was inside, probably wondering why Elena hadn't come in yet. "Not here. Later." But David followed her into the room anyway. Elena saw Zerthik look up from her reading, her eyes immediately shifting to a wary purple color Elena had never seen before. "Your Majesty," David said with exaggerated formality. "I'm Major Chen, Elena's former fiancé." Elena wanted to disappear into the floor. Zerthik's eyes went to that deep blue of concern as she looked between them. "Major Chen." Elena has mentioned her past military connections. Elena definitely had not mentioned David specifically, and she could see Zerthik knew it. "Elena, we need to discuss your transfer request," David said. "I haven't submitted a transfer request." "You should. This arrangement is inappropriate for someone of your rank and training." Elena felt anger building in her chest. "My commanding officer approved this assignment." "Your commanding officer doesn't know you like I do. You're getting too attached. It's affecting your judgment." Zerthik stood up gracefully. "Perhaps I should give you privacy for this conversation." "No," Elena said quickly. David was just leaving. But David wasn't finished. "Elena, you're a combat medic, not a diplomat. You're trained to heal humans, not fraternize with aliens who were shooting at us 6 months ago." Elena saw Zerthik's eyes flash to a red color she'd never seen before, then quickly back to neutral silver. "Get out," Elena said quietly. "Elena, get out now." David, after he left. Elena stood with her back against the door, feeling shaky and angry. "Are you all right?" Zerthik asked gently. He had no right to come in here like that, no right to talk to you that way. He's concerned about you. From his perspective, I am the enemy. Elena turned to face Zerthik. "Are you my enemy?" Zerthik's eyes shifted through several colors before settling on that warm gold. "I hope not. I would be sorry to lose your friendship." "You won't. David doesn't get to decide who I'm friends with." But over the next few days, Elena felt the pressure mounting. Other human personnel were watching her differently. She heard whispers in the corridors. Commander Williams called her in for more frequent reports. "Any new intelligence, Sergeant?" Elena gave him the same carefully neutral reports she'd been filing. Cultural observations, diplomatic protocols, nothing that felt like betraying Zerthik's trust. Meanwhile, Zerthik was dealing with her own pressure. Elena noticed her speaking more frequently with her advisors, and the conversation seemed tense. Zerthik's eyes stayed in darker colors more often. "Everything okay with your people?" Elena asked one evening. "They're questioning my decisions. Some think I've become too sympathetic to human perspectives." Elena felt a chill. "Are you in trouble? Nothing I cannot handle?" "But they want me to conclude these negotiations quickly, either reach an agreement or declare them failed and return home." "How long do you have?" 2 weeks, perhaps 3. Elena felt something cold settle in her stomach. She'd known this arrangement couldn't last forever, but she hadn't thought about what would happen when Zerthik left. The idea of going back to sleeping alone, of losing their morning conversations and evening music sessions, felt unbearable. That night, Elena had the worst nightmare she'd experienced since their first week together. She woke up screaming, and Zerthik was beside her bed immediately. "Elena, you're safe. You're here with me." Elena was shaking so hard she could barely breathe. "They were all dead again, my team, and I couldn't save them." Zerthik sat on the edge of Elena's bed and took her hands. Feel my breathing. Match it. You're safe. As Elena's panic subsided, she realized Zerthik was still holding her hands. It was the first time they'd had physical contact beyond accidental touches. I can't go back to sleeping alone, Elena whispered. I can't lose this. You won't lose it. Whatever happens with the negotiations, you won't lose what we've built here. But Elena could hear the uncertainty in Zerthik's voice. They both knew that forces beyond their control were pulling them toward a separation neither of them wanted. The next morning brought news that changed everything. Commander Williams called an emergency meeting. We've received intelligence about a possible sabotage attempt against the peace talks. Security level is now maximum. All non-essential personnel are confined to quarters. Elena caught Zerthik's eye across the briefing room. The Queen's eyes were that worried purple again. As they walked back to their room together, Elena made a decision. Whatever happens, she said quietly, I want you to know that these weeks have been the best part of my life since the war ended. Zerthik stopped walking and looked at her with eyes that had gone soft green. For me as well. Elena, you've given me something I didn't know I was missing. What's that? A friend who sees me as just myself. Not as a queen. Not as an alien. Not as a symbol of anything. Just as Zerthik. Elena smiled despite the worry gnawing at her stomach. Just as my friend who keeps the nightmares away. That night, as they settled into sleep under the shadow of unknown threats, Elena whispered Kethara to Zerthik. Viltara Keth, dear friend, Zerthik whispered back. Elena fell asleep to the sound of Zerthik's steady breathing, not knowing. It might be one of their last peaceful nights together. Elena woke up to the sound of urgent voices in the corridor. She checked the time, 3:47 a.m. Beside her, Zerthik was already sitting up, her eyes alert and silver. Something's wrong. Elena whispered before Zerthik could respond. Elena's communicator crackled to life. All medical personnel to emergency stations. We have multiple casualties in the diplomatic wing. Elena jumped out of bed and started pulling on her uniform. I have to go. I'm coming with you. Zerthik, it could be dangerous. If someone is attacking the peace talks, they're attacking my people too. I need to know what's happening. They ran through the corridors together, passing security teams heading in the opposite direction. The diplomatic wing was in chaos. Elena could smell smoke and see scorch marks on the walls. Commander Williams was coordinating the response from the main hallway. What happened? Elena asked as she grabbed her medical kit from the emergency station. Explosion in conference room 3. Looks like sabotage. We have 6 injured, 3 human, 3 Zephyrian. Elena felt her training take over. Where are the casualties? Medical bay for the humans. But the Zephyrians, Williams looked uncomfortable. They're refusing human medical treatment. Elena looked at Zerthik, who was speaking rapidly with her advisors in their musical language. The Queen's eyes were cycling through colors quickly, purple, red, back to purple. They're afraid. Zerthik said, turning back to Elena. They don't trust human medicine after an attack by humans. But they'll die without treatment, Elena said. The explosion caused internal injuries. Zerthik's eyes went to that deep blue of pain. I know, but fear is not always rational. Elena made a decision that went against every military protocol she'd ever learned. What if you vouched for me, told them I could be trusted, Elena? You could be putting yourself in danger. If something goes wrong, people are dying. That's all that matters. Zerthik looked at Elena for a long moment, her eyes shifting to that warm gold of deep affection. Come with me. They found the injured Zephyrians in a storage room that had been converted into a makeshift medical area. Elena could see immediately that 2 of them were in critical condition. Zerthik spoke to them in their language, her voice carrying an authority Elena had never heard before, even injured and in pain. The Zephyrians listened with respect. I told them you saved a human life in front of me, Zerthik translated. That you are a healer who sees no difference between human and Zephyrian blood. Elena knelt beside the most critically injured Zephyrian, a young male with blue skin darker than Zerthik's. Tell him I need to check his breathing and heartbeat. Elena said calmly. As Zerthik translated, Elena placed her hands gently on the patient's chest. Zephyrian anatomy was similar enough to human that she could work with it, but different enough to be challenging. His lung has collapsed, Elena determined. I need to insert a chest tube to reinflate it. That sounds invasive. One of Zerthic's advisors said in accented English. Elena looked up at Zerthik. Tell them exactly what I'm doing and why, every step, for the next 2 hours. Elena worked on the injured Zephyrians while Zerthik translated every action, every decision. Elena explained her reasoning, showed them the instruments she was using, and constantly checked that the patients were comfortable with each procedure slowly. Elena watched the fear in the Zephyrian's eyes transform into trust when she successfully reinflated the collapsed lung. The young male managed to whisper something that made Zerthic's eyes go bright gold. What did he say? He said you have gentle hands for a warrior. Elena felt tears prick her eyes. She'd spent so long thinking of herself as a failure as a healer. But here, in this moment, she was exactly where she needed to be. As Elena worked, she noticed Zerthik doing something remarkable. The queen was moving between the human and Zephyrian medical areas, translating not just language but explaining cultural contexts that helped both sides understand each other. The human custom of checking on patients frequently isn't nosiness. Elena heard Zerthik explaining to a Zephyrian advisor, it's how they show care. And to the human medical staff, when Zephyrians close their eyes during treatment, they're not being uncooperative. They're showing trust by making themselves vulnerable. Elena realized she was watching something historic happen. Zerthik wasn't just translating words, she was building bridges between two completely different ways of thinking about medicine, trust, and care. When the immediate crisis was over and all the patients were stable, Elena found herself sitting on the floor in the corridor, exhausted but satisfied. Zerthik sat down beside her. How do you feel? Zerthik asked. Good, really good. Like I actually made a difference. You saved 3 lives tonight. Lives that would have been lost without your skills and courage. Elena leaned back against the wall. We saved 3 lives. I couldn't have done it without you making them trust me, and I couldn't have helped anyone without your medical knowledge. Zerthik's eyes were that soft green of contentment. We make a good team. Commander Williams appeared in the corridor, looking tired but relieved. Good work tonight, both of you. The investigation is ongoing, but it looks like the sabotage was carried out by extremists from both sides, humans and Zephyrians who don't want peace. Elena felt a chill. Both sides? Some people profit from conflict, Sergeant. They'll do anything to keep the war going. After Williams left, Elena and Zerthik sat in thoughtful silence. What happens now? Elena asked. With the peace talks, tonight changed things. My advisor saw how humans and Zephyrians can work together when we trust each other. Your medical team saw that Zephyrians can be grateful and cooperative patients. So the talks will continue? Better than that. I think we'll actually reach an agreement. Zerthik's eyes shifted to that bright gold of excitement. Tonight proved that our peoples can not only coexist, but help each other thrive. Elena felt a mix of joy and sadness. And then you'll go home. Zerthik was quiet for a long moment. What if I didn't? Elena's heart jumped. What do you mean? What if I established a permanent embassy here? What if the cultural exchange program became permanent? Elena stared at her. You'd stay. If I had a reason to stay. If there was someone here who might want to continue sharing evening conversations and peaceful dreams. Elena felt tears of happiness start to fall. I can't think of anything I'd want more. Even if it meant being assigned permanently to diplomatic duty instead of combat medicine. Elena thought about it. I think I've found my calling, not just healing bodies, but helping people understand each other, building trust across differences. Then it's settled. Zerthik's eyes went to that white gold of pure joy. I'll speak to the council about the embassy tomorrow. 3 months later, Elena stood in the newly constructed embassy wing of Station Alpha 7. She wore the uniform of a diplomatic liaison officer, a position that had been created specifically for her. Unique skills in cross-cultural medical cooperation. The wing had been designed with both human and Zephyrian aesthetics in mind. Elena's quarters were connected to Zerathik S through a shared common room. That had become their sanctuary. As evening approached, Elena heard the familiar sound of Zerathik practicing human music. On the guitar Elena had taught her to play. The melody was Amazing Grace, but played with a Zephyrian rhythm that made it sound both familiar and completely new. Elena entered the common room to find Zerathik sitting by the large window that looked out on the planets to moons. "How was your day?" Zerathik asked, setting down the guitar. "Good. Dr. Kim and I finished the cross-species medical training program next month. We'll have the first mixed humans Ephraim medical teams. And how do you feel about that?" Elena sat down beside her friend and looked out at the moons. "Like I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be." Zerathik's eyes went to that soft green of deep contentment. "As do I." As they prepared for sleep in their respective rooms, Elena paused at the connecting doorway. "Kethara, my friend, Viltaraketh." "Dear Elena." Elena fell asleep to the familiar sound of Zerathik's steady breathing from the next room, knowing that tomorrow would bring new challenges and new opportunities to build understanding between their peoples. But tonight, she was simply grateful for the unexpected friendship that had grown from a broken power system, and to people willing to trust each other with their vulnerable moments. Sometimes the most important revolutions began not with grand gestures or political declarations, but with two beings choosing to share space with kindness and discovering that peace was possible, one peaceful dream at a time.